Hey, it's Conrad, the mortgage guy, and you're listening to Have More Money Now. And of course, we couldn't do it without John Layfield. John, how are you, man? You're muted, bud.
Well, it got Dave Silva hates me, so he muted me, made me look stupid, is what he did. He's been against me ever since because we're both Texans. There's like the little Texas heat going on. It's all about him.
So listen, you guys are like, instead of the Harlem Heat, y'all are the Texas Heat. Are you big heat and he's little heat? How does that work?
Exactly. Of course, he's not that little. We're both pretty big, so we both got big heat.
Oh, I wouldn't call you pretty big. Let's go with extra medium. We are excited to be with you here today. And
as we used to say, I want a medium shirt. Just put a large tag on it.
I like that.
Make my arms look good.
I used to resemble that remark about 8th grade. Hey, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the world today. I'm pretty excited because a couple of weeks ago, we had our very first guest. We've got not one, but two guests today, and we're going to be talking about something near and dear to wrestling fans' hearts. We're going to be talking about wrestling collectibles. But before we get there, I do want to briefly talk about, what's going on. Last week, you gave us some insight as to best practices when America was at war, like what to consider and what not to consider with the financial markets. Of course, over the weekend, I think there was a lot of panic about the price of oil and gas, but it feels like that's on the move even right now. What are you seeing now, and what do you expect, John?
Yeah, last week I was talking about the fact the Strait of Hormuz, which is about a 21 to 24 mile wide strait there. There's not you can't really close it. There's not like a door there. It's just where a choke point of the Persian Gulf. It's where 20% of the oil of the world flows through. And Iran has always threatened in any type of conflict to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Easier said than done. America has said that we may take over the Strait of Hormuz. Easier said than done. They've been planting mines in it. They actually did hit a cargo freighter. Here's the problem. President Trump said that they were going to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which is a great idea. They're also going to back insurance companies that will send oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. Another good idea. Here's the problem. It's not working. And the reason it's not working is if you're a company and you're a CEO, forget about the fact that this oil is insured. You have real people's lives on this ship. You're not a general. You're not a colonel. You're not in war. You're sending people through something that is potentially dangerous, even though you'll have a carrier that is going through there to escort you through the Strait of Hormuz. If something happens, your career is tarnished for the rest of your life. And what we found is that there's no one willing to go first. And don't blame them. I mean, you're taking a huge risk of people that are just civilians that just work in the oil field or the oil infrastructure areas, and we're not seeing it. And so because of that, we're seeing a lot of companies say we're taking out the strategic reserves, which is a complete Band-Aid to be put on this. We have some real issues right now with oil prices, and that's one reason that they're going so much higher is because we've realized that the Strait of Hormuz choke point is a real deal, and there's not an easy solution. Because even if you say we're going to take care of you, you're a private company, and you're sending people's lives through this ship. If one random rocket comes through and hits your ship, you're sunk. You're sunk as a career for doing this. People want to talk about how stupid you were. It's hard to recover from this. So we got some real issues with oil around the world right now.
I do want to ask you, what you see or how you see this could affect anything else. As we're recording on Wednesday morning, the inflation report has just come out, and it looks like on a monthly basis, prices rose 0.3% in February. That's up from 0.2% in January. But overall, I think most people would agree that inflation is kind of unchanged at 2.5% or 2.4%. So there's no major news one way or another with regard to inflation. But is there a negative effect or something that our listeners who may be on the fence or they are heavily invested, do they need to do anything with regard to the changes that are happening today, whether it's Iran or anywhere else?
Not really. And inflation is more looking in the rearview mirror. So it's looking about what has been in the past, not what's occurring right now. There's a real issue right now with planting season coming up with the farms. With fertilizer getting fuel because it's not going to come through the Strait of Hormuz. It's got to come through somewhere else. So you could see some real inflation. You could see some real food inflation because if this fertilizer, they are not able to get the fossil fuels they need to make this stuff, or at least it's hampered because of it. You could see some real inflation that's coming. I don't think that's probably going to happen, but it's certainly a real possibility. As far as what people should do, I've said last week, when missiles fly, you buy, and that's been a tradition that for in any type of conflict around the world, I don't think that changes here. I don't think there's an easy out in Iran. I think we're going to have some real issues, but I think you're going to see several things that happen. I think you're going to see oil prices are going to stay probably fairly high. The oil majors, I like ExxonMobil, I like Chevron. I don't own either one right now, but I'd buy both right now. I think both be a terrific buys long term. And things like uranium, the uranium stockpiles are so short around the world that you have some real issues with fossil fuels and with all types of different fuels like this. And you're buying stuff like this, I think are pretty good buys.
We've seen that fuel is up around 11%. We've also seen that over the last week or so, the S&P is down 2.9%. So I don't know that there's necessarily a major reason for calls or panic, but I appreciate that you're having the white knuckle advice be the standard here on the show. Let's just ride it out. But you've often said here on the program, hey, I'm not trying to be political, but these things do affect, our income and certainly our asset investment. So I want to ask you, as I look at Polymarket and I'm asking, hey, which party will win the House in 2026? 85% of the money is coming in on the Democratic Party. Is that anything to keep, in mind as you make a long-term investment strategy? You're basically telling us what to look for or not look for when the bombs are flying, but with regard to a change that we may be seeing, coming this November, is that going to change your investment strategy at all just yet, John?
No, not yet. And especially because leading up to the midterms, the only chance that President Trump has of being someone that is not a lame duck, that is basically gone, because if he gets killed in the midterms, which is likely to happen, that's 85%. I mean, I completely agree with that. Presidents get killed in the midterms no matter what. But I think that President Trump, because he's not running for another term after this, at least we don't think. And because of that, he's probably going to get killed in the midterms. He's going to do everything he can, because if he's killed in the midterms, his agenda stops that second. I mean, you're going to have indictments, you're going to have impeachments, you're going to have all kinds of things. Typical politics. Again, we're not talking politics. The other side does it just like the Democrats will do if they get in power as well. But you're going to see a lot of things happen between now and then. So you're going to see rebate checks. You're going to see, President Trump floated the fact that you might take some of this tariff money, which is now different money. It's not being called tariffs anymore. It's going to be called something else, even though it's tariffs. Be given as a refund to consumers. You're going to see a lot of stimulus between now and the midterms. Now's, I think, is still a pretty good time to buy on dips.
And to be clear, John, when he says the president's going to get killed, I hate that we have to clarify, given everything.
Oh my goodness, yeah, certainly, yeah.
He doesn't mean literally.
Yeah. I should have used different nomenclature. So that's not good wording. I'm saying getting killed politically, certainly not. And I hope that he nor anybody else has any type of attempts on them.
I knew what you meant, but it is crazy in 2026. We have to clarify.
Oh my God, it's nuts.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
There's so many freaking nut cases going on around here. The stuff that happens up in New York. I mean, it's crazy what's going on in the world right now. People are nuts.
Hey, speaking of nuts, I think a lot of people feel like they may be nuts trying to invest right now. And I saw something that it made me laugh, and I thought I've got to ask JBL about this. Of course, I'm talking about a report from Jim Cramer. I don't know if you saw this, but it came out yesterday. And this quote in particular made me happy. Jim Cramer says it's quote unquote just impossible to make money today. John, is it impossible to make money right now in the stock market?
Yeah, it is impossible to make money right now in the stock market if you listen to Jim Cramer. I mean, my God, he's the one that said back up the truck to buy more Bear Stearns when Bear Stearns was being sold for $2. It later sold for $10 because shareholder revolt, but you'd have lost a fortune. List. I don't know how he's on television. Yeah, Jim Cramer to me is how he's on television. I have absolutely no idea. There's a lot of ways to make money. We don't have any uranium in the world. All these AI centers have got to have copper. Oil prices are going to be high. There's a lot of incredible things going on in the world right now. Who knows? He's a buffoon.
Hey, there is another report that I want to ask you about that came across my desk that I thought, man, this is fascinating. I can't wait to ask John about this. It's not exactly good news, but it's in regard to 401ks here in America. And there was a report that came out this week that said Americans are now taking more hardship withdrawals from their 401k retirement accounts than at any time in history Now you have kind of given the old Ronco approach to investing. You've told all of our listeners, hey, max out your 401k, certainly do it if you're getting any sort of match, and just sort of set it and forget it, I think is what they used to say about the Ronco device. So I'm curious, like when you read this report that more Americans are making withdrawals from their 401k than at any other time in history. That includes 2008, by the way. How does that strike you?
It strikes me as worrisome because the people need money. And that's worrisome, very worrisome. You're seeing the same thing with second mortgages from older people. They're not downsizing their homes because they're using the homes to use as second mortgages because they need money. A lot of it's healthcare costs. I mean, healthcare costs are so freaking outrageous, especially for older people. That's what a lot of this basis is from, is these 401ks, about second mortgages, things like that, because people just simply have bills to pay. And that's worrisome. I don't know what we're going to do about healthcare in this country, but I mean, our healthcare system, the insurance system, beyond sucks. It's just criminal what they do so many times. Not all the time, but a lot of times. I mean, it is. I mean, it's a horrible system. And a lot of this that is going on is because of healthcare, and something about that needs to be fixed. Except it's hard to be fixed when you got half of your Congress in your pocket, which like healthcare does.
Hey, I do want to ask you, with regard to pulling money out of a 401k, I got to tell you, I think that might be near the top of the list out of the book of bad ideas.
Yes.
First of all, that is going to become a taxable event, and you're going to have to pay taxes on that right up front, right, John?
That's right. Yeah, you want to be able to limit your taxes as much as possible. If you're taking a tax event, I mean, it depends on your income at the time. That's one of the reasons you want to take money out of your 401k after you've retired, because your income is so much further down, or at least reportable income is down because it's measured differently, that you don't have to pay as much tax. But if you're taking that while you're still working, especially, I agree with you. It's a really bad idea. Now, people may not have an option. People may just need the money, and I understand that. And if you do, thank goodness you got it. But just remember, you're going to pay a huge amount of that percentage in taxes.
But that's not the only cost. You also have the opportunity cost. I mean, you've told us about the miracle of compounding interest. And the only way you really ever have a shot at growing your 401k is not by contributing whatever out of your paycheck right now. That's how it gets started. But it would almost be like, as we say in the South here, hey, those biscuits got cooked in the squat. I mean, you couldn't go harvest your crops just before they're ripe. Like you wouldn't say, well, let's just go dig it up and see what we can eat today. That was not the original intent when it went in, and it's going to cost you the opportunity cost long-term of that potential upside, right?
Yeah, that's right. I just had a friend call me and ask me about an investment, an annuity that he was trying to get into, and he's going to put $1 million into it, and he was going to get a certain amount back per year. And his brother is a broker, and he said, hey, you understand in 10 years, you could triple this money. And he called me to ask me, he goes, is that right? And I said, well, no, there's nothing guaranteed. His brother wasn't saying that either. But if you have the average return of the S&P plus dividends at 11%, that money does triple in 10 years. $1 million be $3 million. You put it in the S&P, you make 11%. That money approximately triples, not exactly, but approximately. So yeah, you have a lot of opportunity costs when you start taking money out of retirement, especially that's growing tax deferred or tax free. I mean, that is a huge, it's much more so than just taking money out of a savings account because of the opportunity cost. You're right.
As a reminder, you don't pay tax on borrowed money. So I just want to throw that out there, that if you've been thinking about, hey, maybe we need to look for a solution. If your family is feeling the squeeze, maybe the solution is not to take a huge haircut and pay all of that tax right up front on a 401k withdrawal, and then cost yourself the potential upside, the opportunity cost down the road of how that could grow. I love that example of, hey, it could triple every 10 years. What usually doesn't triple every 10 years is your home value. So I'm going to suggest that the solution for you, if you're listening right now and you're feeling the pinch and maybe you have more month at the end of the money, is to look to the home equity that you may have. Because again, you don't pay tax on borrowed money. So for instance, if you pull $100,000 of equity out of your house, you're not going to have any sort of taxable event on that. There's no tax on that. Now, certainly you do have to make payments back, and well, that interest is tax deductible that you'll pay. Whereas the tax that you have to pay on a 401k, man, you're pulling your money right out of the game, and you've got that huge loss right up front. I'm saying all that to say, if you're feeling the pinch, I want to hook you up at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this. But as a rule of thumb, your house is probably worth more than what you paid for it. There's probably equity there. So the solution to your financial cash crunch in your house may have been hiding in your house this entire time, not in your attic, not in your junk drawer, not in the basement, but in the equity in your house. So if you are feeling the pinch right now, I want to encourage you, before you pull the trigger on a 401k, at least look at using the equity in your house, whether it's with a home equity line of credit or it's with restructuring your other debt. For instance, I know that there's a lot of banks out there that are really doing a lot of business with the home equity line of credit. You referenced it earlier, John, by calling it a second mortgage. Some of our listeners may not understand. That's pretty much the same thing. It's not the first mortgage. It is something in second position. So it could be a closed-in 15 or a closed-in 30, meaning you're going to pay principal and interest payments for a set amount, and it'll pay off in 15 or 30 years. Or it could be known as a home equity line of credit. Now, as a rule of thumb, those don't have any closing costs associated with it. It's usually at an interest rate related to prime, but here's the downside. They're usually only done by banks who require a lot of paperwork and a really, really strong credit score. That is not the case with Fannie and Freddie. They've recently expanded their guidelines in a major way, specifically removing the minimum credit score requirement. And moreover than that, they've expanded their debt to income ratio, meaning if you're really struggling, you're really maxed out, you've got a bunch of cards and you don't know where to turn, Fannie and Freddie can help you perhaps when the banks can't. So I just want to throw that out there too. If you've been on the fence about using the home equity and for whatever reason you were not approved for a home equity line of credit, that does not mean you can't still get help from Fannie and Freddie. Restructuring the first mortgage, including all your other debt, gets you a much better payment and allows you to go ahead and pay down the mortgage faster. Again, I think John and I agree. Hey, the only good debt is no debt. Like the only good mortgage is no mortgage. As a practical rule of thumb, I want you to own your house free and clear. I think that's the American dream. But how do we get there? With good, smart financial advice. And we're trying to do what we can to help you in your specific scenario at savewithconrad.com. So be sure to check us out there. Today, we're excited to introduce a new sponsor to the show, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. They've been fighting for the people for over 35 years, and they've recovered over $30 billion for their clients. And not only are they one of our new sponsors, they're also the official law partner of WWE. And what I love most about Morgan & Morgan is that they truly are for the people. Check this out. Today, they're coming in hot, and they want to hook up one lucky fan with 2 tickets to WrestleMania 42 in Las Vegas. That's happening this April 18th and 19th. That's right. They want to send one of you to Las Vegas to watch WrestleMania 42 live. In addition to the 2 tickets to WrestleMania, they'll also be giving this lucky winner $2,000 to help with their travel expenses to Las Vegas. Now, to enter, all you've got to do is text HEAT42 to For the People. That's HEAT42 to 484-373-6753 and follow the prompts. Don't miss out on your chance to watch WrestleMania 42 live. Just text HEAT42 to For the People. There's no purchase necessary. Open to legal residents of the 48 contiguous United States and D.C. who were 18 plus. Sweepstakes in March 29th, 2026. This is a paid advertisement. John, I'm excited about what we've got planned next here on the program because we've got somebody joining us who I consider to be the foremost expert in the niche of all niches. We're talking about professional wrestling trading cards. Now, some of you may be familiar with the phenomenal stories that we've all heard about, Honus Wagner cards or Mickey Mantle rookie cards or, man, my goodness, that Michael Jordan rookie card from way back when. But did you know that wrestling cards could be the next big thing? They have been quietly appreciating. We've had 6-figure sales, multiple 6-figure sales. But recently, the ultimate wrestling collectible for a lot of wrestling fans sold. And we want to know, how is that affecting the card market? Who better to ask than our resident expert, Mr. David Peck. David, how are you, man? Thanks for jumping on with us and chatting about wrestling cards today.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. And that was quite an intro, listening to you guys talk about the financial markets. I've been a financial advisor for 22 years, and that was some very sound advice.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, man. I'm excited to introduce you to John here and us talk about wrestling trading cards, sort of catch everybody up on what's going on in the market, what's hot, what to look for. this is kind of a new market for a lot of collectors. I think people who have collected baseball or basketball or football, wrestling maybe has never been on their radar, but boy, it's a big opportunity right now, is it not?
Yeah, I got into wrestling cards at the end of 2009. I was trading options, and I kept just lighting money on fire, and decided I needed to buy something tangible with those dollars if I wanted some action, and that attracted me to the cards. And for about 10 years, the market was kind of muddling along, and it was getting a little bit stronger. And then COVID hit, and a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk started tweeting about the wrestling cards, and I actually sold him a 1982 Wrestling All Stars Hulk Hogan, just with hopes that he'd put it on Twitter. And about 30 minutes after it was delivered, he tweeted it out, and I mean the card literally like tripled in a week. So in 2022, Panini started releasing a number of products, and then Topps got the license in 25. And so what's been happening is, as they put out these new releases, it's giving collectors, just like sports cards, the opportunity to kind of speculate on the newer stars. And so an example like Tiffany Stratton has been a rising star in wrestling, and her cards have been really on fire the last couple of years. And the formula is so different than it used to be. The card manufacturers now limit certain cards in the sets. I started collecting baseball cards in 1985, and a Topps Dwight Gooden, it was the same card. Everybody just was chasing the same copy. Maybe one was nicer than the next. But the modern products have chase cards, so there might be a 1 of 1 or a 1 of 10 or a signed one, et cetera. And so you've really seen a huge increase in the activity in wrestling cards in the last number of years. And I actually think there's really showing no signs of slowing.
John, what do you make of this? All of a sudden, professional wrestling cards are hot. How about that?
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. David, I got to ask you the most important question. How's the JBL card doing?
Well, I'll tell you, your most popular card is a Canadian football card, which is
a World League card. World League card.
World League. I apologize. Yeah. I thought it was Canadian. So.
No. I almost got a chance to play in Canada. I went up there, and the end zone was completely frozen, and I couldn't even use it. And I thought, I'm not coming here. So, well, it's a true story. I was up in Winnipeg, but I played the World League.
You do have a rookie card in the 1997 Cardinals set, back when you were the tobacco chewing Bradshaw, and that's a popular card. I mean, it's I think I feel like maybe I've seen. Have you been in any of these legend sets now where you're going to be signing and they're going to re-release you?
I think so. Yes, I've signed some stuff for Panini and Topps, but I'm not sure what all I've signed.
I feel like I've seen it, and that's the stuff. It's really interesting because like the Cardinal card actually came in like a little deck of cards, and the primary card people chase in there is Rocky Maivia, but they're like playing cards, and so it's kind of hard to really truly call them like a trading card, but like a Topps or a Panini, and that's a real card. And and the grading element now is really what's fueled the values, because back when I got started, the most valuable card might have been a Trish Stratus signed card, was maybe $300. There's a Hollywood Hulk Hogan from 1998 at the time that was $300-400. And now, I mean, a 1982 Wrestling All Stars PSA 9 Hulk Hogan sold for an eye-popping $132,000 last year. I actually sold 2 sets of that. These were my backup sets. When you get them graded, there's this thing called the set registry where you punch in the cards, and based on all the average ratings, it spits out a number. And so I have the top sets in the hobby, but I also collected backup sets because I treated cards like stocks. I thought, you want to have more than one copy if you think they're going up in value. So I bought quite a few. And so I sold my backup sets last year for almost $200,000, and which I've got a hefty tax bill coming, but the basis was only 10,000. So, I mean, if you had told me many years ago that, I'd be able to sell my backup set for almost 20x, I wouldn't have believed it. So, I mean, there's been some really incredible growth in prices.
You got a 20x return on that. So how long a time frame was that?
Well, some of those cards I bought in 2010. What's really interesting is the primary card in there is the Hogan. And I only paid 565 for that copy in 2011. And when you break it out, it probably was somewhere between 75 and 85,000 on that card. There was a Ric Flair that I paid. I was the first person in 2010 to pay over $1,000 for a card. And that one was probably 50,000 in that set. The basis was really driven higher by some of the later purchases. So, but I held them, some of them for as long as 14, 15 years. And it's really just shocking what's happened to card values really across all genres. Wrestling, as Conrad alluded to, is a real small niche. It's gained a lot of steam, but I'll tell you what, I mean, vintage baseball, some of those have just been the best investments one could hope for. Obviously, everybody saw the Pokemon sale. Logan Paul probably cleared $10 million profit in 5 years on a card. I mean, it's just incredible.
I do want to ask you, you mentioned grading is really what's helped everything level up. From my understanding, there's a few different grading companies, and I'm sure that some are more desirable than others. What would be your advice as a best practice of how to handle grading, who to work with, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, grading's gotten a lot more complicated because when I got started in 2010, I submitted my first cards in April of 2010. It was so cheap. I mean, I literally graded out an 82 All-Star Hogan, Flair, all these high-end cards now for like $8, $9 a piece, right? Now what's happened is like PSA has really changed their pricing structure. And its entry level grading is, $23 now. Some of the cards that you're going to show the audience, the grading fees on those would be, hundreds of dollars now. So my take is, PSA is the leader, right? I early on realized that in 2010, they had beat BGS. They had captured 80% market share on new submissions. They had the best branding. And I figured if my wrestling cards ever have a shot to do anything, it needs to be with PSA. There's Beckett, which is BGS. There's SGC. There's CGC. There's a few other grading companies. But I'm in this, when I spend money for a company to grade the card, I want the highest return on investment. And so while it has gotten more complicated, I just don't have any desire to grade with anyone else but PSA, because if you have a quality card and it scores high with them, the multiplier effect is just going to be so much greater than the other companies. Now, if you're just somebody who wants it encapsulated and, doesn't really care about return on investment, maybe you pick some of the other companies, but it's very clear who's the leader. And, once again, I mean, I don't like to throw good money after bad. Now, turning a profit these days with grading has gotten way more difficult because the entry fees are so high. But, it's what you have to do if you want to catapult the value. So you just need to try to learn to pre-grade, or if you don't know how to do that, there's people out there that'll look folks' cards over. It's also gotten easier. PSA has teamed up with GameStop, so you can go to a GameStop location and they can submit the cards for you. But I'm a PSA guy all the way.
Is there value to be found on eBay right now? I mean, I know that there's a lot of people who immediately think, oh, well, I'm going to get in the wrestling cards, I'm going to go to eBay. Is that where they should look, or is it more on a localized, it's at Facebook, it's at, card shows, it's at a estate sale? Where do you find value with these older cards, or would your advice be to perhaps new collectors, hey, just start buying the new stuff and it's a buy and hold situation?
Well, a large part of my collection has come from eBay. I started buying in 2009, but it's gotten a lot more difficult because there's so many high-priced buy it nows. A lot of aspirational pricing. I'll see cards that maybe theoretically I think's a $20 card, and somebody's asking 200. And I don't know if that's they're not educated on the prices, or if they're just trying to find a sucker. It's hard to know. So, in terms of there being great value, you really need to sift through a lot of that stuff. I've seen auctions have provided better value than buy it nows, but a lot of folks are scared to run those. There are a lot of Facebook groups now across all trading card genres, so that's definitely a good spot. Card shops used to be very sparse, but because of the new products, they're very tied into offering those. So I think my approach is always, you just need to be looking. I'm always hunting. Unfortunately, in recent years, I haven't really been able to buy a lot because I've got already so many cards, and I don't want to buy it maybe a price I'm not comfortable with. Really, where I grew a lot of my collection was opening boxes and opening sets. I think if you're prospecting for graded cards, you and I had messaged some time back. I'm almost positive you've got an 85 OP cheat, the Series 1 product with the Hulk Hogan.
I do.
That's a tremendous box. I mean, that's something most people probably would leave sealed, because it definitely has great value sealed as an untapped potential gold mine. But the Hogan, for example, there's only four PSA 10s of the Hogan, and there hasn't been a sale in a number of years. I mean, I would probably estimate that card is 25,000 plus in a PSA 10. So the higher that number goes, it's generally going to drag the unopened boxes with it because of the potential contents inside. But that's the place where if you're grading, buying raw cards off eBay is at this stage is not probably your best route, because a lot of that stuff's been picked over. The reason they're selling it in most cases is because they don't think it's going to grade higher than a 7 or an 8. Whereas if you open a sealed product, you're getting untouched merchandise. But that said, and then the new products, most of that stuff comes out of the pack in really solid shape, right? And then that, a lot of those cards, it's kind of a 10 or bust. So ripping new packs is a great route, because one, it's fun, and two, I mean, people, you see it all the time. Somebody's scoring some kind of super fractor or a beautiful signed card. So I think I'd be looking, keep your eyes open, look everywhere, and just try to educate yourself. This is the card market in general. There's a lot of like, I have more information than you type stuff, right? And so you need to be do a lot of your own research, because you can get taken if somebody's unscrupulous.
David, I think that he had old friends of Honus Wagner back in the day, and he told him, said, one day my card's going to be worth millions of dollars, back around 1908 or whatever he was. Was leading the world in home runs. People would think that was crazy. I would think it was crazy back 30 years ago, if I'm sitting there when these cards first came out, that these cards would ever be worth anything. Basically, the gum in the pack was the thing that was the most valuable thing that we thought was probably going to be worth something. All of a sudden now they've got this entire emerging market. Is this it seems like it's one of two things. It's either the new world, which it may feel like, the Pokemon and all the collectibles that are out there, or it's a bubble. Which do you think it is?
I think it's a little bit of both. We need to differentiate, so I'm real active in the stock market, right? And you can have a rising market. Like, we've seen a lot of rotation the last couple months, where the beaten down energy stocks have moved and some of the high flying AI stocks have corrected, right? But yet the market averages really haven't fallen a lot. Well, the card market is very similar to the stock market in the sense that there's different degrees of risk in different types of cards. So a 52 Topps Mickey Mantle is a blue chip, right? That's the Coca-Cola. It's a slow but steady, and it's going to be there. On the flip side, the Pokemon cards. I mean, you've seen these meteoric rises. Like there's a very, I'm not sure the name of the card, but there's like 40,000 PSA 10s and it's worth $3,000 right now. I would argue that's not sustainable. So what you need to do, like part of the reason the wrestling cards have been able to go up is the supply is not that high. So the Andre card that we're going to show, there's only 2,000 of those cards produced, and those were made from a magazine in 1982. There's only 4 of those in a 9, and there are no 10s. And the reason the Andre card is so tough is those are the first U.S. produced trading cards of wrestling from 1982. And they came in a cellophane pack. So Andre, being on the top, is the most prone to damage. Well, one of those in mint condition is highly sought after. So a card like that is like an apex item where, there's sort of bragging rights associated with it because, so few can have it. On the flip side, an Andre, let's say in a rating of a 3 or a 4, that's relatively available, those cards have a harder time going up in value. So I think if somebody wants to look at the card market, I don't think you can paint it as just the new reality or a bubble, but I think there's parts of both. Now, the Honus Wagner, for example, that's just now an iconic piece of history. It's an asset that everybody's aware is incredibly valuable, and it has a very low supply. So my background is in economics, and what really attracted me from an investment standpoint to the wrestling cards, especially the older ones, was the low supply, because you didn't need a big change in demand to get exponential price increases. So, if you're looking at this from an investment standpoint, you do need to be mindful of just the overall supply. How many are graded of that card? How many are graded higher? Those are the types of things that are really going to impact the long-term value. And honestly, JBL, I think it's very hard to predict, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, because culturally there's been a huge shift in the demand curve for trading cards in general. And how long that lasts is really anybody's guess.
I am curious, as a little kid, when I was first getting into cards, I used to go to the grocery store or Walmart or whatever and pick up a copy of Beckett. That's how I would look up and see what my cards were worth. Of course, that was 30 something years ago. How do you know where to look and what's valuable and what's not? What are the resources that you use today?
Well, I think eBay completed auctions is what a lot of folks look at first, right? You also want to look at golden auctions, heritage auctions, and their completed listings to see, what kind of items are selling. And then there are like 130 Point is a website you can go to that cards will show up on there where like the eBay buy it now price or best offer will show up. There's folks that use Card Ladder, which is a pricing service. But I think the challenge really with pricing is knowing if the stuff was actually paid for, because you'll see sometimes a hot auction, and if you look at the bids, the top 2 bidders have like 0 feedback. So they're trying to artificially inflate the card, and then a month or 2 later, the card comes right back for sale. So I think if you're trying to do research, you need to be mindful of looking at the bid list. You need to be mindful to look if that card comes back for sale. The other thing is that, there's so much activity now, like on Instagram and Facebook, whatnot, Twitter, which, I like Twitter. I'm active on there. You see lots of card sales. So you can see that the prices people are asking and somebody might say take it and it's sold. But pricing, this is kind of one of the areas where the people that are bearish on cards do have a little bit of an upper leg, because I think pricing and reliability on data is complex and certainly not perfect.
I want to show you a tweet that I saw over the week. I guess it came out last night, but it was a screen grab. And it says, great news for WWE collectors who love looking at the market data for WWE. The Card Ladder team has added another 135 cards to the index. Just a month ago, we were at 200 cards. Now we're at 435 and growing. Tons of excitement around the space right now. Man, this feels like the timing could be really, really strong for a lot of collectors to jump in the market. Is that the way you see that?
Well, I'll tell you, what's really changed things is this prospecting element. Back to the risk profile. I mean, buying a brand new potential star on the roster, carries a lot of risk because you could have injury, you could have maybe the fans turn against them. The bookers, what if all of a sudden they just don't like you anymore, and release you? So I think prospecting within wrestling is a little bit more complicated than pro sports because it's not just talent. You can look at, somebody and think that they're going to, like Braun Breaker is a perfect example of incredibly athletic, talented, but what if all of a sudden his hernia injury turns into something that's really bad? These are things that are real risks. And if all of a sudden his career flames out in 6 or 7 years, the odds of that being worth a lot aren't that high. So for me personally, I like some of the older cards because I think that, when you factor in nostalgia, we lost Hulk Hogan this past year, and I realize for some he's a controversial figure, but he's the Babe Ruth of wrestling. I mean, he is the guy. If you ask just a random person if they know anything about wrestling, Hulk Hogan's the first name that's going to come up. And so, it's not really shocking that his collectibles have been rising. So I think if somebody wants to speculate, that's on them. But if somebody wants sort of more of the tried and true stuff, you need to go with established stars that have lower production cards, like a Roman Reigns, for example, is obviously, up there. I mean, he's a real talented wrestler. Some of his low printed cards have done incredibly well. Cody Rhodes, once he came over to WWE and became the champ here a few times, his cards are doing well. So I would stick personally, if you're trying to invest, with some of the bigger names and lower production cards of theirs.
David, we can't thank you enough for all the time. I think a lot of us learned a lot today. How can folks who are listening keep up with what you're doing these days?
I'm real active on Twitter. I can't call it X. I'm DPEC100 on there. I use Instagram a little bit. I'm 1982 Wrestling All-Stars on there. But, I post pictures of my collection. I try to educate folks on there and just try to have a good time with the cards. And, wrestling cards are fun. I think that one of the things that I would encourage people to do is if you are buying cards, buy cards of people you like, buy cards that make you smile, buy cards maybe that bring you back to your childhood or just something that excites you, because that way, if they go down in value, you still have them and you like them. I don't think people should approach cards purely on just monetary. I don't have a problem with that. So for me, it's both.
Thanks for all the time, man. We greatly appreciate the education that we got in trading cards. This was great, wasn't it, John?
It was wonderful. David, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We'll be right back after these words. Fellas, you already know what time it is. It's time to level up, and Blue Chew just dropped something crazy. I'm talking next level championship belt gold-plated energy. Blue Chew Gold is the newest innovation from the #1 chewable ED brand. And this ain't your grandpa's little blue pill. This is the 4-in-1 beast that's setting the gold standard for performance. We're talking 2 ingredients for blood flow to keep that rocket pumping, mixed with apomorphine and oxytocin to turn up the arousal and connection in your brain and body. Blue Chew Gold dissolves under your tongue, and it works in as little as just 15 minutes. That means you can get it on quicker and stay in the game longer. Elevation without hesitation. Peak passion and peak performance in a single tablet. If your bed could talk after this, it'd be asking for a break. Make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month of Blue Chew Gold with the promo code JBL. That's promo code JBL. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. We thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. All right, welcome back into the show, man. I'm excited to keep this train rolling. John, we have perhaps saved the best for last. You know, there's been a lot of chatter in the wrestling space and the collecting space about a pretty big time auction that ended just a couple of Sunday nights ago. Somehow, some way, a wrestling collectible has broached the $1 million mark. John, did you hear this? Hulk Hogan's boots from WrestleMania 1 sold for $1,037,000. Did you ever think you'd see that happen in your lifetime, John?
Never. I never thought that'd be worth anything. I mean, you know, back in the day, you know, we'd sit there and, you know, if we even thought that, hey, these boots that we're in are boots that Hogan was in, even though Hogan, you know, is obviously one of the biggest stars, maybe the biggest star in the history of wrestling, were worth anything. I don't think anybody thought that would happen. This is crazy.
It is crazy. And of course, the people who made it happen, as a reminder, this is a crazy story. Maybe you've missed it. A couple of years ago in 2023, these same boots, the exact same pair, sold through Golden for $66,000. Now, at the time, the only thing people could sort of attach it to was a poster. There was a famous poster from the mid 80s of Hulk Hogan. And people said, hey, these are his autographed boots. And this is the poster. And well, they sold for $66,000. I have to admit, I knew these were out there and I passed. Boy, did I make a mistake. It turns out that when the new buyer received these, he used a photo matching service and they were able to say that, hey, you know, there's some details that even the Hulkster himself didn't remember about these particular yellow boots. Now, some of our listeners may think, well, how could he not remember which set were his WrestleMania 1 boots? Well, the reality is he probably had dozens, if not 100 of these yellow pair of boots that he wore year in, year out, day in, day out, match after match. I mean, Ric Flair himself has said he's had hundreds of pairs of boots. Now, he's prone to exaggerate. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but he at least switched it up. With Hogan, by and large, for years and years, they were all yellow. So how could you keep them straight? He just knew, hey, I wrestled Andre the Giant in these, and he autographed the outside that way. It turns out these particular boots were photo matched to WrestleMania 1. Like not just WrestleMania 1, but back then it was just called WrestleMania, the very first one. Who knew if there would ever be a WrestleMania 2 or what it would become? And what a photo Heritage used to showcase this. Not just Hulk Hogan wearing the boots in the center of the ring at WrestleMania in Madison Square Garden, but having his hand raised by Muhammad Ali. When you understood the provenance of those boots, man, what a bidding war that it created. They sold for more than $1 million. Here to talk to us about it, my friend and soon to be yours, Tony from Heritage Auctions. Tony, how are you, man?
I am great today. Thanks for having me on, guys. Can't wait.
Thanks for jumping on with us, man. I can't believe we're talking about wrestling collectibles. You know, when I think about Heritage Auctions, historically, I think about baseball or maybe basketball or football or golf, but it feels like all of a sudden there's renewed interest in pro wrestling even before the Hogan boot, but it's got to be crazy for you right now, right?
It's unbelievable. There have been a lot of people asking, sending in inquiries to us with gear, match-worn items, and that kind of thing. And it's developed so rapidly. I remember when we sold the Macho Man's robe from WrestleMania 2, the ring announcer Chet Kopic got it from him at the Rosemont Horizon. And we sold that for $5,400 about 10 years ago. Now today that's worth $150,000 easily. So that just tells you how this has grown. It's unbelievable. The one thing on those Hogan boots that still shocks me is he wrote there, "That's my real MSG blood." And I don't think anybody put two and two together and realized, hey, MSG, Madison Square Garden, let's look up WrestleMania. So that's the one thing on those that still kind of shocks me, that he wrote that on there and nobody figured out that was from WrestleMania. But tremendous boots, great wear, not too much wear, because a lot of times these things would get worn and worn up to the point where there was nothing left really. And These are in great shape. And the whole thing is the photo match is what really took them over. Now, did we think it was going to be, over $1 million? No, I didn't. I don't think anybody could have thought that. But once you get in that rarefied air, the sky's the limit on some of this, on a lot of this stuff. And that being such a big moment in history, the first WrestleMania, because if that wouldn't have gone off well, it might have died. Who knows what could have happened after that?
It's interesting to think about how the significance of one, because it obviously Hulk Hogan ring worn boots are going to be valuable to any collector. But just like we were talking about earlier, the difference in a card grading being a 7 versus a 10, boy, the delta there is just incredible. Well, Hulk Hogan had dozens of matches wearing yellow boots in Madison Square Garden, and it would be cool to own any of them. But what adds that extra oomph, a huge multiple, is that it was from the first WrestleMania. I don't think it can be overstated that the photo matching piece is critical, because it's not just who wore it. It's what events or moments you can associate this item with. Is that correct?
Exactly. And any of those historic items, they just carry so much value. The WrestleManias, those pay-per-views, those really special events. And I mean, that was the moment wrestling really took off and became mainstream during WrestleMania 1. And obviously after he slammed the Giant in WrestleMania 3. But those really signature moments, it's hard to put a price on that, to be honest with you. And, and we're starting to see that, we're starting to see, these guys didn't wear one pair and then get rid of them. They wore them for months on end. JBL can talk about that, I'm sure, as well as anybody, that they wore these things for a long time. And for so many wrestlers, Hogan wore yellow tights, yellow boots. So there wasn't a lot of flair in them until, Ric Flair and the Macho Man, some of those guys really took it over the top. But, this is historic, and we're so happy to have sold them.
Tony, why was the quantum leap in price? What happened? Was it a different bidder? Was it a different consortium of bidders or a group of bidders? Why did the price jump so much for these boots? I understand what they are, but you look at what the average prices of famous things are. This thing took a quantum leap. Why did it take a quantum leap?
I think what's happened is it's become more and more mainstream now. Wrestling collectibles, it's not just fans anymore. Now it's people speculating, it's people, people investing. And wrestling, I think for a long time has been, should have gotten much more love than it has gotten. And now when you get to that 300, 400,000, you're getting guys with money that they'll spend whatever it takes to get it. Obviously, Logan Paul posted that he was bidding on these as well. And a lot of times now it's not just collectors anymore. Now it's guys that if they want it, they're going to pay whatever it takes to get it. And on some of these historical items, it's hard to put down a price on them because they're just so, they're literally the only known pair from that event. So I think that's why it really jumped up is, it's a rarefied air. And when you get to that level, guys will pay anything to get them because they want to have them. It's such a signature piece.
You talk about, how guys felt about it. Back in the day, we would have never dreamed that anybody wanted something that we wore. We just wore it, and it wasn't that big a deal. So we might have a special, make sure we have our best boots on for Madison Square Garden, but we didn't get like boots specifically made most of the time just for events like that. It just happened. Is there a holy grail out there that's still out there, or maybe two or three? You look at the Honus Wagner card, look at Mickey Mantle cards in baseball. Is there something in wrestling out there that's the holy grail for you?
I would say the boots from WrestleMania 3 for Hogan would be the top of the top. I would also say, Andre the Giant's boots would be another one. I mean, there's not a lot of Andre stuff out there. I believe there's the museum in North Carolina that's got where he lived in Ellerbe. They've got some of his items. I would say Andre and Hogan are the two that are far and away the ones that could move the radar. I would say Hogan's WrestleMania 3 boots because, trunks are cool and everything, but boots would be the holy grail in my opinion, because that was the moment it just exploded when he slammed Andre.
We've seen 3 sets of Hogan sales this year so far. We know our personal friend Jerry Briscoe set what we felt like was going to be a record with a 6-figure sale with the WrestleMania boots. And then almost immediately behind that, a single boot that had been on eBay for seemingly forever years ago sold with this renewed interest based on the Jerry Briscoe WrestleMania 9 sale. This was a single boot from WrestleMania 18 versus The Rock. It went even higher, I think 146,000. But this is a multiple of that, this WrestleMania sale for $1,030,000 and change. So I do want to ask, do you believe, and I don't know what you can or can't reveal, and I certainly want to be respectful for that. I've always felt like for this to be $1 million sale like that, there has to be a business component like that to have like a 6 or 7 multiple at that point. It does feel like there's some business behind it. Is the potential buyer of this Fanatics or WWE or TKO, or do you think Deep Pockets for the first time are entering the wrestling space?
It's a collector. It's a collector. It's a major collector, and he's got a great collection. Obviously, he's got an amazing collection, but I think, he wants to own the best of the best. And if you have a great collection and you don't have these boots, it's a step below. And to have the best of the best, it was a guy who really stepped up to the plate.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Because I know it's happened a lot with some of the baseball cards and some of the, game worn jerseys where it's a company that wants to make a huge splash, but there's still guys out there that will open up their pocketbooks to acquire something like this. And I'm just glad that, that wrestling is starting to get on the map a little more than it ever has been before. And that people are starting to realize that this stuff is, a lot of it's one of one and a lot of it is really collectible. And I think you're going to see the values across the board go up too because of this sale.
Yeah, that's what's so exciting to me as a collector myself is the talk is always, hey, what is the comp? Now, normally in my mortgage business, I'm talking about comparable sales for what have houses like yours, near yours, sold for in the last 6 or 12 months. But in the collectible market, comps are everything. The idea that you had a 6-figure boot for WrestleMania 9 sale allowed the WrestleMania 18 sale to beat it. Now we've got a new high mark at $1 million for the WrestleMania 1 boots. You think perhaps the only thing that could beat that would be the Hogan boots from WrestleMania 3. I totally agree. The WrestleMania 3 boots, of all the Hogan boots, that would be the pair to have. But as we look outside of boots, are there other wrestling collectibles or artifacts that you think hold significant value?
Absolutely. We started dealing with the Macho Man's family. And when we first started dealing with them, our big question was, at the time, wrestling gear hadn't sold for huge, huge numbers. So that was what we were up against in the beginning of this about 3 years ago now. And I think as far as what's going to hold value is going to be the ring-worn gear. I know you had David Peck on just a little while ago, and the cards. And I think that the cards are very collectible because you can grade cards. So I think the cards are a good investment, and the ring-worn items, the jackets, because that's a moment in time, basically. We had some of the most iconic Macho Man items in the last year, and we've gotten $84,000 for one of his first robes. So for people looking to buy and to, quote, invest, I would look at the ring-worn gear because a lot of that you can photo match. A lot of it was made only for that specific event. So I think that's where you're going to see a great deal of progression as far as prices go.
Tony, it's been so crazy to realize what's going on in wrestling. I was sitting with Ron Simmons in Baltimore, last year, bad with time. I see Ron a couple of times a month. And it's the reason I do signings, so I can go see Ron and have some fun and watch some college football normally, at least during season. But I was sitting there with Ron, and we're sitting there signing autographs, which we didn't have that ability back then, back in the day. You didn't have signed, paid gigs to go to. And I'm sitting there talking to Ron. I said, now you became the first recognized black heavyweight champion here in Baltimore. And I said, you're making more today signing autographs, aren't you, than you made for that payoff for that match, didn't you, with Vader? And he goes, yep, sure am. It's absolutely nuts. We never dreamed any of this would happen. Is the trend growing, or is it just, you think it's a fad? What do you think it is right now? Not just about the autograph sessions, but also the memorabilia. We never dreamed that selling our boots or anything else would be something that people would even care about. But neither did Honus Wagner, I'm sure, back in the day when he saw his first card. Nobody would have believed that the thing goes for millions of dollars, years later. What do you think it is?
I think a lot of it's supply and demand. On the boots, on the gear, there's not a huge supply of it. People are starting to understand that now, that it's not like baseball now or basketball where they wear literally one jersey a game and they can switch it out. With this gear, it is so much more limited. You mentioned autographs, and we've had record prices for Andre the Giant autographs. Back from the Jean Ferret days, we just sold a Jean Ferret signed 8x10 for $15,000. And we've consistently hit 10,000 for Andre signed 8x10s, because let's be honest, after 86, after his back surgery, he didn't do a lot of autograph signings. He didn't sign a lot. He kind of wanted to avoid the whole public at that time. And his autograph is incredibly hard to find. Bruiser Brody's another one. I'm a collector. It took me forever to find a Bruiser Brody autograph. I found him on a Shinsky board, thank God. But, a lot of it's supply and demand. Some of these guys died very early. Like you look at like Ravishing Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect. To find them on an 8x10 is not that easy to find. I mean, it wasn't like they were just signing, and a lot of them were still in character when they weren't wrestling. So there's a lot of pitfalls, a lot of tough autographs to find, and a lot of people are collecting. I know David was talking about the 82-83 All-Star Series. There's a lot of guys collecting autographs on those cards, and there's some guys that are virtually impossible. Obviously, the biggest one being Gino Hernandez, where people, they didn't make a lot of those cards, and to get him to sign it, there's only like maybe 3 or 4 known in the whole population, and Andre's the other one. So a lot of it's supply and demand. Obviously, the less they sign, the more value it is. So, and there's a lot of guys that you just can't get their autograph. They're really difficult to find.
How important is the item to be related to the boom period of the WWE? We've spent a lot of time talking about Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and you mentioned Randy Savage a few times. I'm glad to hear that we're throwing names out like Bruiser Brody and Gino, but I am curious, the really high watermarks of what we hope that these sales continue to grow. Are they always, as a rule, going to be related to the high points of WWE as well?
I really think it's more of the modern era, or the quote modern era from the 80s on up. I mean, Gorgeous George literally should be the highest valued, guy. I mean, he was the one who kind of set the whole table, I think, at least. And I don't know if we're going back to the 50s and 60s of wrestling, if it's got the same kind of collectability. I think to a lot of, I'm 49 years old, and I know guys my age, we loved wrestling in the 80s, and we loved it in the 90s, of course, and now. But I think a lot of it's, back in the 80s, the territories should get more love. Like, I, for one, think ECW someday is going to be, it had such a cult following. I think ECW is very undervalued. I think there should be a lot more value in that material, because it was so different for the time. But it's really, I think it really comes back to the 80s, late 70s. I think when Hogan moved to WWF, in 82, 83, I think that's when that's where it kind of almost starts. Although, going way back in the day, I think that material should have more value.
I do want to ask one final question that I've got just as a collector. There's always been a debate, because I think a lot of our listeners know that I'm a big belt collector, and I've collected a lot of belts through the years. And there's always been a discussion amongst belt collectors. Should you get the item signed or not?
Great question.
I know when it comes to like robes and things, a lot of guys have the inside of the robe autographed. I know on belts, as a best practice, I saw a lot of collectors having wrestlers autograph the back of the belt. But for display purposes, if the autograph is on the back, well, you'll never actually see the autograph. If you do have one of these ring-worn items, does it help or hurt to have that item autographed?
That's a great question. Now, with the Macho Man stuff, I know for a fact what he did is he literally just went in, boom, 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 signed everything. You know, I'm a game worn collector. I would rather not have it signed, but if you do have it signed, you're exactly right. Sign the inside of it, because you can put it on a mannequin, and if you can have the autograph, but I would rather not have it autographed or have it signed on the inside. That's just my, as a collector of game used jerseys, that's how I would rather have it done. And if you are going to have it signed on the inside, just so then you do have the autograph and have them write match worn if they're comfortable doing that.
Now, I think you're going to have some representation at WrestleCon this year, and you guys have a big auction coming up in May, and then another in August. Tell us about these details.
Yeah, so we've got a big auction coming up in May, May 15th to the 17th, and we're going to have items at WrestleCon on display at the Heritage booth. I believe we're going to have some of the Macho Man stuff. We have some great Hogan boots coming up. We have his final WrestleMania against Vince McMahon. We have one of the boots with an airbrushed Hogan image that'll be coming up. We have a ring-worn shirt of Hogan that he ripped off in 1986, I believe, at a house show. So we're going to have a lot of wrestling. We're going to have a lot of cards. We're going to have photos. We're going to have tickets. We're going to have everything. And we're going to be there the entire time at WrestleCon. My email is tonyg@ha.com. Phone number 214-409-1997. If you have any collectibles that you want to have at our booth, it's going to be a great display. And we're going to try to go the whole way through as well, not just have current guys or vintage guys. We want to try to have something for everything: cards, original photos, autographs, ring worn. So it's going to be fun. I had a great time last year, and I know we did the Royal Rumble we did in Indianapolis a year ago, and I can see us doing a lot more shows because once you open up that box, you don't close it shut. You just kind of keep going with it, and the market is really fun. It's really solid right now, and we can't be more excited than having some of these items that we're going to have on display there.
And Gino Hernandez is still the greatest heel ever, right?
Oh my God, yeah. And I knew of him, but when I moved here from Highland Park, I didn't realize Highland Park, Dallas, and all that, all the money there and everything. And he played the character so well. And
sure it was a character?
What's that?
You sure it was a character?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's one of the absolute toughest ones. And the thing is, we had some of Paul Bosch's contracts from Houston, but on those ones, he just signed his normal name. If you have it signed Gino Hernandez, it's got much more value than just his standard contract signed name. So yeah, Gino Hernandez is one that for a lot of diehard guys, he's the holy grail because they're just not out there. He just didn't sign a lot, and people didn't think, oh, I'm going to get this card signed. It's going to be worth money someday. And obviously he died very young. So great name in wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, be sure to check out Tony at Heritage Auctions this year at WrestleCon. Don't miss his auctions coming up in May and August. If you've got a ring-worn item and you want to talk about it, shoot him an email, tonyg@ha.com. And, of course, you can catch everything going on with Heritage at ha.com. Tony, this was great, man. Thanks.
I love it. Anytime you guys want to do it again, I love talking wrestling collectibles. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, Tony.
No, thank you. And thank you guys for hitting that subscribe button, turning on the notification bell. We greatly appreciate all the time that you spend with us each and every week. We're running out of time today, so we won't get to any fan questions, but we do have plenty to talk about next week. If you've got a question for us, hit us in the comments here on YouTube, or be sure to tag us on Twitter. If you haven't already, follow us on Twitter. It's @HaveMoreShow. And John, this was a blast. I love talking about wrestling collectibles, and we got to give some advice about what to expect with the war and people who were thinking about pulling money out of their 401k. We checked a lot of boxes today.
We did check a lot of boxes today. This war thing to me is just so interesting. And again, we're not talking either political partisanship here. We're just talking about, what's the off ramp here? And it's, man, we're in some crazy times, but the collectibles to me, this is nuts, Conrad. I don't think anybody back in the day thought, my boots someday, of course, not everybody, it goes only like Hogan and Savage, so the big names, but be worth a fortune. But I can understand why it is.
Can't wait to see what's next. I'm a collector myself, and I can't wait to see what this market does. We'll be talking about it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next week right here on Have More Money Now.